Hey everybody, welcome back to the I Play 2 podcast. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, former Wake Forest basketball player Anthony Bilas joins the show. As a senior at Charlotte Latin High School in North Carolina, Anthony was a second-team all-conference member. After walking on at Wake Forest, he earned a scholarship prior to his senior season, where he would start his first game on senior day. And now Anthony works behind the scenes in statistics and original programming for the WWE. His father, Jay Bilas, has been a fixture on ESPN calling basketball for 3 decades, and Jay started for Duke in the 1986 National Championship game versus Louisville. And Anthony's aunt, Cheryl Garza, was a fixture on the UCLA volleyball team in the late 1980s. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. How are things with the WWE at the moment?
Things are really good. Kind of on fire right now. You got John Cena's retirement tour, which has been insane, but a lot of good stuff coming.
You mentioned John Cena. I actually had his brother Steve on my show back a couple of years ago. Nice guy, lives in Rochester.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
With what you do for the WWE, can you talk a little bit about what your role is?
I essentially work as a researcher for all of our broadcasts. I provide stats and information to producers, on-air talent, behind-the-scenes production people, just to make sure they have all the correct, up-to-date information for anything that needs to be said on air. So that involves graphics, it involves spoken word by announcers, it involves social media stuff. We work a lot with behind-the-scenes broadcast people just to make sure that all the information that we portray in our broadcast is correct. And that kind of just runs through me. So anytime you see a random stat on a WWE broadcast, odds are it came from myself or someone on our team. And it's been a really good experience.
In terms of research, because I used to do documentaries, and I always would love to find something that I didn't know kind of randomly. What's a cool random stat or fact that you found out that you didn't know going in?
I think a lot of that stuff comes from the stuff we do for, like you said, documentaries and like podcasts. We have a podcast network at WWE. We produce our own documentaries. And so I do a lot of work trying to find little fun facts about that stuff. And that's always a little bit more fun than finding statistical numbers with our athletes, just because it feels a little bit more like an accomplishment to find. I think always finding like a WWE superstar's path to WWE is always interesting. Before we started recording, we mentioned Roman Reigns. Like, he was a super accomplished football player at Georgia Tech. He was all conference. He was a monster. And so kind of looking into some of those things and their journey to wrestling is always fun for me to look into.
We mentioned John Cena earlier, and he was a center in college. And when you look at Cena and you think about what a normal center looks like, they don't always add up.
He went center to bodybuilder to professional wrestler, which is quite an athletic journey.
But it is a common thing for football players to go to wrestling. Currently, the Usos, they played football. Bray Wyatt played football. If you look a little bit further back, Vader, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, DiBiase, all those guys played football.
It's such a physical sport. The physical transition makes sense, but also just the body type, big, strong. You got to be a great athlete to play football. It just kind of makes sense, the carryover. You don't see a lot of basketball players doing it just because I don't think it's as strength-based. But football to WWE pipeline is very strong.
In terms of who you've gotten to meet, who is a person or two that you've had a chance to meet that you kind of say in the moment, I can't believe I'm speaking with?
I'm pretty behind the scenes with WWE, so I'm not really working with the superstars themselves that much. A lot of our executives are former wrestlers, so guys like Triple H is obviously running the show now. So, I've spoken to him a couple of times, and that's obviously a surreal feeling as someone who grew up watching him. But in my prior job, I was at CBS Sports doing research, and that was probably where you got to work a little more hands-on with, quote, celebrities. March Madness, we had Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and Ernie Johnson there. I worked hand in hand with Jay Wright for 2 years. And so those were little like, whoa, I can't believe these guys are coworkers to me. Like, that was a super cool feeling. and just a reminder of how lucky I am to work in such a cool industry.
You mentioned Jay Wright, and back in, I believe it was 2006, I was at the Final Four, and he won multiple Coach of the Year awards that year. And I remember myself and a colleague, it was like, oh, hey, Coach Wright, we get to interview you again.
He's the best. He's a pleasure to work with.
And I've only met him once, but Ernie Johnson, they don't get classier than he is. What a nice guy Mr. Johnson is.
One of the kindest guys. Something that stood out to me is the Inside the NBA guys are in New York or kind of at CBS for 2 weeks a year. But Ernie especially really takes the time to learn everyone's name, to know everyone's job. And so when he sees you, he says, hey, Anthony, or he says, hey, Rob, or whoever's in the office or whoever's in the studio. And even if he doesn't know a single other thing about me, it's just a nice feeling to know, like, oh, like he remembers my name. He remembers what I do here, and makes you feel a little bit more important in those kind of long March Madness days. So that was really special. He's definitely a class act.
Another guy like that, and I'm sure you've met along the way at some point, is Reese Davis. Reese is one of the most professional, kindest people that I've met, and was just a pleasure to work with. And I actually didn't see him for about 10 years. And then game day was in Dallas, and I just kind of randomly went up and said hello to him. And I got the biggest hug ever. It was like I had never left.
Yeah, Reese is awesome.
So taking a little bit of a step back here, I know your dad played basketball, but how did your interest in basketball begin?
I mean, I think it really began with him. It's funny. I think I've said this in an interview before where I don't think he instinctively said, I'm going to make this kid love basketball. I don't think he did that as a dad, but I think just his job and the access that I got at such a young age to such cool basketball experiences just innately helped me fall in love with it. If any kid had my upbringing, they'd love basketball the same way I did, regardless of other interests that they may have. So just having the access that he had to incredible basketball games, incredible coaches and players that I got to see up close and meet up close, just helped me fall in love with it. I think it started around age 5. When you're a kid, you're playing every sport possible. I played soccer, baseball, basketball. You did everything. And the experiences I had in the game of basketball just propelled that sport ahead of everything else.
From when you were so young, what's an experience that you had that said to you, I really want to pursue basketball further?
It was the experiences I had probably at Duke as a kid. We could get tickets to any game we wanted. Obviously, my dad did a lot of games at Duke. And so getting that experience multiple times a year and getting to watch a game up close in Cameron is pretty unique and bucket list for any basketball fan, let alone a 7-year-old kid. And to have that experience for 18 years, what more could you want? And then we would do it every year where I would go to a game day with him, just the two of us. So like Friday, I would get out of school and go to Michigan State or Kansas or Kentucky and just got to see these incredible atmospheres. That was kind of the nail in the coffin of, I want to do this. Like, I want to play college basketball. There's nothing else I really care about. I want to do this. And so like when I was 10 years old, I didn't think about playing in the NBA. That wasn't my dream. I just wanted to play in college. That was the coolest thing ever to me.
And you got to accomplish that at Wake Forest. So let me ask you, what was the recruiting process like for you?
It was definitely different when I got to high school. Like I said, like I knew I wanted to play in college, but knew I wasn't a blue chip recruit. When I got to probably 15, 16, like earning a scholarship somewhere was definitely a goal of mine. But as kind of my career went on, you realize, all right, the schools that are recruiting me are not really the schools that I see myself at. Not from a, I'm better than that school, but they were small, low major, D2, D3 schools that just didn't fit for me. And so I was coming back from a visit from somewhere and mentioned it to my mom. I was just like, yeah, I just didn't feel like that special. Doesn't feel that big to me. And my mom and dad kind of said, like, well, what if you went to a big program and walked on? I didn't love it at first. I kind of thought, like, well, I kind of want to play. But the more I thought about it, like, the more I just thought this is about learning and getting a good basketball experience. And I think a bigger program is where I would do it. So really, there was a coach named Lane Odom who was an assistant in a bunch of D1 schools for a long time and coached at my high school for a brief period when I was in middle school, and then ran a kind of recruitment company where he would help lower tiered athletes match with athletic programs in football, basketball that he thinks would be good fits in. So I kind of mentioned it to him and he ran with it and said, let's get you in as many doors as possible. He kind of helped me say, well, I think this would be a good place for you. I think this would be a good place. And the first place he mentioned was Wake. And immediately I was interested. And so I just shot an email to one of the assistants. Brett Ballard was his name. He's now the head coach at Washburn University in Kansas. I just kind of said, hey, look, here's what I'm interested in. I want to walk on. I put some film in there and sent him my AAU and high school schedule. And Wake responded really fast. And what I liked about them was they said, we'll come see you play and we'll see what happens. Like some schools just said, if you want to come here, you can. And I think that's where the name recognition kind of came in. I tried not to mention my dad at all, but I knew that it would come up. But Wake kind of felt like they made me earn it. And so they came, saw me play 2 or 3 times and then said, if you can get in the school, you can be on the team. And that was kind of the done deal. Like it was probably August when that happened of my senior year, and applied probably a month later and was in 2 months after that. So it was pretty fast from deciding to walk on to finding my school, but it was kind of all on me. I was the one sending emails. I was the one making like cold calls and that sort of thing. So I take a lot of pride in that for sure.
You mentioned Lane Odom. That's the son of Dave Odom, who coached at Wake Forest at one time, right?
So I had met Coach Odom a few times. He kind of took an interest in me when Lane talked to him. And me being a Charlotte kid, I grew up watching Wake Forest. My mom had gone to grad school there. I went to basketball camp there as a little kid. And I don't know if Dave Odom reached out to the team on my behalf, but he said pretty early, you belong at a place like Wake Forest and you'd fit there and they would love you. And so that was an easy connection for me. And then he was around all the time. Like he would come to multiple practices a year. He'd come to all our games. So to kind of have that guy in my corner, I think was very helpful.
As you know from the professional world, sometimes it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And the key there is to know how to use it to your advantage, but not to take advantage of the situation.
Right. And that was a thing, like, I still kind of think that had Wake come and see me play and I put up a couple stinkers, they might have said, you know what, I think you might be a fit somewhere else. But thankfully, I played well enough in those games to think that they could give me a spot. But people claim like nepotism and stuff like that. I'd be silly to sit here and not acknowledge the privilege I had of having a dad who's prominent in the college basketball space. But I didn't take anyone's scholarship. I didn't take anyone's spot on the team. I felt like I earned it. And then once I got there, I definitely earned it because I did all the work that everybody else did. You know, my dad was never there. He wasn't in practice. He was at a handful of games, never at workouts or anything like that. So I take a lot of pride in the work that I did and things that I accomplished.
Speaking of the work, could you kind of talk about the role of a walk-on? Because that's not the easiest position to be on any college team because you do a lot of the stuff that the stars don't want to do, and you don't necessarily get the reward of playing time, which everyone wants.
A walk on, for anyone who doesn't know, is a non-scholarship player. So a college basketball team has 13 scholarships a year. Most coaches fill that. They use 11 to 13 of them. And then they have a few walk-ons who are insurance, practice players, that sort of thing. I had a blast doing it. I think a big part was I went in not caring about playing time. I knew where I stood I knew the kind of player I was, and I knew I wasn't as good as the guys who were actually being there to be recruited as big players. So I never took it personally. I never took slight by it or anything. Not an unaware person. I was aware of where I stood athletically and skill wise. I was still a good player, but I knew I wasn't an ACC caliber starter or anything like that. But being a walk on is hard. You have to do everything that the scholarship guys do. You got to go to every lift, you got to go to every practice. We got to sprint because we didn't play a game to the best of your abilities. Even if you didn't play, like, you got to do it. The travel, all that stuff, you're there for every second of teamwork, but you don't necessarily see the benefits of scoring 20 points in a game or anything like that. But I would say the unique thing about Wake Forest is we had a lot of walk-on representation on our coaching staff. Brett Ballard was a walk-on at Kansas in 2001 to 2004, played on their Final Four team in 2003. And he was always a guy who looked out for us and made sure we were taken care of. And then Coach Manning's son, Danny Manning, was my head coach at Wake Forest. His son was a walk-on at Kansas. So I think Coach Manning also had a soft spot for us to make sure that we were taken care of and happy and getting the most out of the experience.
Away from the court, could you describe what Wake Forest is like as a campus and as a school to attend?
Wake Forest is a small private school. Now it's about 5K undergrad, so it's very small. It's a beautiful campus, but it's very closed in. The way I described it is every face you've seen on campus is a face you've seen before. You just don't really know where. There aren't many like complete strangers at Wake, because whether you're walking to class or you're at a football game or at a party or something, you're seeing people that you've seen before, even if you've never met them. So it is a very tight-knit community. And you feel that especially like once you're an alum. You see someone in a Wake Forest hat walking down the street and they give you a go Deeks and you're like, hell yeah. But I mean, from like a social perspective, I mean, it's a small private school. It's pretty white and wealthy. Take that how you will. But I certainly enjoyed it. And I think being an athlete at Wake Forest especially gives you such a unique experience because you're dealing with an entirely different demographic, regardless of the sport. Our basketball team is obviously incredibly diverse. We had players from Greece, Africa, England, Australia. So a very unique experience for me coming from a private high school that was a very similar demographic to Wake's general base, but coming in now dealing with players from all over the world was super cool.
One of your teammates, Brandon Childress, was the son of an absolute Wake Forest legend, Randolph Childress. What was it like to work with Coach Childress and learn from him?
He was awesome. I love Coach Dolph. He was such a different kind of coach that I've ever had because he was one of the few coaches who was a badass on the court and could still kind of do it. Like he could still play a little bit. We would do like one-on-one sessions and he would jump in from time to time. And so he was kind of a player coach in a way where he would talk trash to you, but it was just a fun coach-player relationship with him. He was a huge competitor, wanted to win, incredibly knowledgeable of the game, played in the NBA, played overseas for a long time. Having someone who is Wake Forest royalty on your staff while at Wake Forest just helps put things in perspective of the goal that we wanted as a team, which was to get Wake Forest back to when Coach Childress was winning ACC championships. That was our goal. And so he was kind of a constant reminder of what Wake Forest could be if you put in the work and handle your business.
While you were a player there, did you ever get a chance to meet former Wake Forest and NBA legend Tim Duncan?
Yeah, I think it was like the first week of my freshman year. I had been there all summer, and most of the famous alumni are pretty hands-on with the program. Chris Paul, very hands-on. Josh Howard would come back all the time. Rodney Rogers would be around. So you meet them and kind of get to know them, and they would know you. But from what I understood, like my first 2 months in the summer is like Tim Duncan's kind of a mythical figure. You know, he doesn't live in the area. He was working for the Spurs at the time. So it was like a weird thing of like, all right, this legend just isn't around all that often. And then I can't remember like the exact context, but we were just told like, all right, come play pickup at 3 o'clock. We show up and it's like Ish Smith, Chris Paul, and Tim Duncan are just warming up on the other side of the gym. And we're like, what? We're playing with them? And it was my welcome to big time basketball moment. This is what it's like to play at a school with these guys. And it was one of the most special feelings I've ever had. Like, not even just as a basketball player, but as a person. You're guarding Chris Paul in a ball screen, and then you look over and the guy setting the screen is Tim Duncan. Like, never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be in that kind of situation. But he was an incredibly nice guy. Talked to all of us, took the time to get to know us. And I think he helped the big men a little bit more than me, but incredibly nice guy.
And isn't it cool in the moment, regardless of what we're talking about, when you recognize just the opportunity you have to be in the shadow of greatness?
It was one of the few moments I've had in my life where I recognized to step back for a second and appreciate how cool this is. Because I remember I went back to my dorm, all these guys who you just met because they just moved in, were all kind of hanging out and getting to know each other. Where were you? And I was hanging out with Tim Duncan. They'd lose their minds. Like, are you serious? Showed them pictures and videos that we all got. So, I mean, it was a really special thing. And I think a Mount Rushmore moment of my time at Wake Forest.
Because you're a research guy, I'm going to do two facts here for you. One is Tim Duncan's sister was an Olympic swimmer. And the second is Randolph and Brandon Childress are the highest scoring father-son duo in ACC history.
I remember when they broke that record, we acknowledged it in the locker room. And Dolph turned to me and goes, "You and Jay aren't far behind." I go, "I think we're a little bit further than you think."
I have a feeling you might have had to play a couple of more games.
I said, like, well, how many did he have? Because you can just add 5 to that, and then that's our number.
Speaking of the 5 point, I would think both baskets would be pretty cool. So take me through the first time you got to score in a college game versus, I believe it was Cornell.
Definitely a special moment for me. Anytime as a walk-on you check into the game, I tried not to think too much about what I was going to do. I just kind of would let the game come to me and see what happened, like just try and play hard and take an opportunity. And for some reason, like for my first 3 years, I had a teammate named Troy Wright, who was a year older than me. But every single time we'd play together, Troy would just be open. And so as a basketball player, you're like, well, pass it to him. And so it's kind of a running joke amongst the walk-ons that Troy is just the bucket of our team, because for some reason, when the walk-ons come in, Troy's the guy that scores all the points. And so the rest of us were kind of like waiting for our opportunity. But it was my senior year, so Troy was gone. And we had an alumni sitting courtside right by the scores table. And his name was Greg McClinton. And he was my teammate for 2 or 3 years. And I just remember him looking over at me being like, "You better score." And just jokingly be like, "You better shoot the ball when you get it." And I was like, "All right, Greg, sure thing." And catch the ball in the wing. And I remember I get a ball screen kind of to the corner. I think they jumped it. And so Sunday, OKK twisted the screen to avoid the help. So I just took it and there was no hedge or anything like that. So I was able just to go straight baseline and didn't have a great angle of the backboard. And I didn't really want to shoot a floater. So I kind of had to take a step in and almost twist my body to use the glass. And was not a shot that I was really used to taking, but I felt pretty in control when I shot it. So I kind of did this little like reverse 180 layup and lost my balance on the way down, but felt pretty cool when I did it. And then I look over and I didn't actually see the ball go in, but look over at the bench and they're going crazy. And I tried to point at Greg, but I think I ended up pointing at our bench. But special moment for sure. And the reaction from my teammates made it that much more special.
And speaking of special, senior day, which is a huge thing in the college basketball world, no matter the level, what was it like to get that first start and fulfill a dream of saying, "Hey, I started a game in the ACC"?
It was kind of everything I'd ever dreamed of. When you're a kid, you picture those moments a lot. And to be there, I knew it wasn't exactly how I pictured it, but to check that off my childhood wish list was really special. To do it against Florida State, who was top 20 in the country, they had some NBA players on their team. Terrence Mann was on that team. He was really good. And I played well. Like when you're a walk on, especially in a non blowout, you kind of just don't want to make colossal mistakes. We kind of had a saying, leave the table exactly how you found it. You don't need to bring that much to the table, but if you take things away, that's a big problem. Because odds are a walk-on's getting spot minutes and they're just trying to survive a certain amount of time. But we went on a little spurt to start the game. I think we started off like 9-0 and felt good to play well and make an impact on the game.
Was there any kind of moment as you're on the court there, just thinking to yourself, this is a culmination of the journey. I'm probably not going to try to play professionally, and I'm happy of how it ended?
I don't know if there wasn't that specific game throughout my college career. I knew when I got to Wake, I'm not going to play pro. That was never my goal. So I knew like it was the end of the road. But there were moments where I would do stuff on the court and would catch myself being like, I couldn't do that a year ago. And catching myself recognizing like I'm the best player I've been in my life right now. And that kind of made it feel all this was worth it. I'm getting bigger, I'm getting faster, I'm getting stronger. One of the moments was my junior year. We played at Duke. And during warmups, that's kind of your time as a walk-on to have a little bit of fun, to throw down a couple dunks and layup lines. And one of my high school teammates, Daniel Jones, who's now the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, he played football at Duke. And so he came to the game. And I was dunking and doing my thing in warmups. And after the game, went out to see him. And he said, like, I didn't know you could do that. And I was like, yeah, I guess I am a significantly better athlete now than I was in high school. I could dunk in high school, but I definitely couldn't do anything other than like a simple one-handed rim graze. But in college, I could reverse it. I could throw down two hands. I could go off 1 or 2 feet. Like I was just a better athlete. So I had those moments for sure, kind of impressing myself with things that I wasn't sure I could do. That always felt good.
Being at Cameron as a player with how much time you had spent there growing up, what was that like for you? Because that's a little bit of a different situation.
It was special, especially the first time. Cameron was a place that I knew like the back of my hand, even like the back hallways and stuff. I'd been there so many times. Felt familiar with the court. The volume didn't bother me. I knew how loud it was going to be. So it was definitely a special moment. You don't really get a chance to like savor it during the game, but during shoot around and stuff, when we'd be in there and it was empty, that was kind of the moment where I'd be like, I'm actually here. I always felt a little bit closer to that arena than any other arena. The Cameron Crazies let me hear it a little bit. They would go after me, but it was all fun.
Drew Barry, who played at Georgia Tech and I had on the show, son of Rick Barry, talked about that they were the best fans that he's ever played in front. And he said not only were they the best fans, they were probably the most intelligent fans.
They would just talk to you. When you're like warming up, you're stretching, all that, they're right next to you. And a couple guys would just ask me questions. They were like asking me about my favorite restaurant in Winston-Salem. And I'm just like, what? What are you guys talking about? So that was always fun. And then they had fun when my sister was there. She was there for 2 years while I was. So a lot of fans knew her and would chirp me about her, of how she's smarter than me and how she's probably a better athlete too and all that stuff. So that was always fun. But I always enjoyed playing in front of them.
Speaking of your sister, I know she's an accomplished artist. How competitive were the two of you growing up?
Not at all. We had very different interests growing up. She was an artist and a horseback rider. And I was basically just an athlete in any way. Like I played probably throughout childhood, basketball and baseball were my two big things. So we were just kind of in separate worlds. I mean, we loved each other, obviously, and we were friends as kids, but there wasn't that competitive nature because we weren't competitive about the same things. So I think had I tried to be a great artist, she maybe would have felt a certain way, especially if I was better at it than her, which never would have happened because she's incredible. But there was never any competitive nature between us.
With your interests being so different And with your dad, especially during college basketball season, being on the road so much, how important was your mom in terms of getting you and your sister to where she needed to be and keeping everything going?
I mean, she was the catalyst to it. We kind of talked earlier about how I like fell in love with basketball. My dad's the reason I fell in love with basketball, but my mom is the reason I'm good at it, if that makes sense. Every coach and trainer I worked with, my mom found them and my mom connected me with them. And then on top of that, my mom got me to where I needed to be for almost my entire life till I got a car and could drive myself. And the reason Tori and I are successful at things really boils down to my mom put in the effort to get us to where we needed to be.
Is there a cherished memory or two that you have from those times with your mom that you look back on now and you realize just how important they are?
I think there are too many to count, but just her being there all the time, like she was at every game, took me to every workout. She was just always there. That meant a lot to me, especially having a dad who couldn't physically be there because he was somewhere else. Obviously, if he had the choice to be there, he would be, but having a parent who was so plugged in really meant a lot.
What's a great piece of advice or insight that your mom gave you that you still use to this day?
My mom would just always push me to try stuff. She would meet this coach who ran clinics on Sundays. She was really impressed by him. And so she'd bring it up to me and I'd be like, I don't know, like, we'll see. Just try it. And it became a staple for me for years. Every Sunday, I would go to North Meck High School and do these 3-hour workout sessions and got a lot better as a result. So, like, putting in the effort to try new things and to push myself a little bit definitely came from her.
Speaking of trying new things, you go from North Carolina to New York. How much of a culture shock was that for you?
It was pretty big. So, I didn't ever think I would live in New York. Like, obviously, I'd been there a number of times, but whenever I'd go, it's nice for 2, 3 days and then you're kind of ready to get back to like normal life. But I'd gotten a job in New York, so I knew I had to move there. And I was nervous about it for sure. I wasn't sure if I would like it. I wasn't sure if I would really make it home, but I think just giving it a shot and throwing my whole heart into it. I love New York now. Yeah, I've been here for 6 years. I don't really want to be anywhere else right now. One of my favorite places in the world. So definitely that attitude helped me out a lot moving here.
New York's one of my favorite cities in the US, and I can talk about New York forever. So let me ask you, when you have the time, what's a favorite place you like to go, whether we're talking restaurants, comedy clubs, etc.?
My favorite restaurant in the city probably is Thursday Kitchen in the East Village. It's like a Asian fusion place and it's incredible. If I had like a death row meal, it would be that. Love the Comedy Cellar. That's one of my favorite places. But I think with New York, there are so many options, so many places. I just want to go where my friends are at. And odds are we'll have a good time. New York is a place where it's so easy to be social just because the public transit, everyone kind of lives pretty close to each other, even if you're in different neighborhoods. And there's so many things to do. So anywhere my friends are, I'll go do it.
You mentioned the Comedy Cellar. That place is near and dear to my heart. About 25 years ago, I could have paid rent there. I was there so often, including their first show after 9/11, believe it or not. It's still imprinted in my mind. And it is such a great place. I have seen so many great comedians there. So for you, who is a comedian that you've seen there that you really enjoyed to see? And anytime that you're free, you're like, I'm going to go see that person.
Gosh, that's tough. I saw John Mulaney there once as like a surprise. And that was incredible because he's one of my favorite comedians. And I think he was like testing a new special that he had. But I don't really go with the intention of seeing a specific person. Like I just go hoping it's a good show. 99 times out of 100, it exceeds my expectations. So I'm trying to think of some of the best ones that I've seen there. Dan Soder is someone who I really like, who I've seen there a few times. Josh Johnson, even the people I've never heard of are some of the funniest people I've ever heard talk. So going there is kind of a guarantee to have some laughs.
I totally agree. When you saw Dan Soder, did he do his Randy Macho Man Savage impression?
Of course. When I first saw him, I didn't work at WWE at the time. So I kind of just thought like, oh, that's funny. I didn't really think much of it. But then like working at WWE and actually hearing Macho Man talk, that was pretty spot on. And then I become a big fan of his since because he's such a big WWE guy.
The Cellar, I remember there would be times that somebody would be doing a set and all of a sudden Ray Romano or Jerry Seinfeld or whoever, and whoever was on stage would just cede the stage and they'd come up, they'd try a 5-minute bit, and then they would just leave. And it was just like, wait, I just paid $15 and I just saw one of the hottest comedians in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those places where you never know what's going to happen.
I tell all the people I know when they go to New York, if there's one place that you should go to that maybe you haven't heard of, it's the Cellar.
For sure. It's almost always a great experience.
One thing I want to get in is I was reading that you were pretty good at speech and debate in high school. How did you get interested in that?
My mom, another one, just try it. There was like a speech and debate class at my high school that I thought would be easy to take and I'd be good at. And then when I got to the class, they said this involves being on the speech and debate team. And I kind of cringed at that, didn't really want to do it. And then I took it with a friend of mine, his parents as well, just said, just try it. You'll have more fun than you think. And did it, had a great time, and ended up being pretty successful at it. And I think shaped my high school experience a lot more than I thought it would.
I'm surprised to hear that your mom was the one who encouraged you because I know your dad was a lawyer and that speech and debate leads right into that.
My dad's attitude toward, I think, my sister and I doing things like that was do what you want to do. I think he had the big overall arching idea with our childhood of you guys are going to be fine. We're going to implement the right characteristics within you to be successful at whatever you do. But what you do is up to you. So if I really didn't want to do speech and debate, I don't think my dad was going to force me to do it. But I don't think it took much to get me to do it. It wasn't something that I like fought tooth and nail against. But it was kind of my mom who's like, I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be good for you. You should try it. And my dad was kind of just like, yeah, do what you want. Like, go for it. But my dad did make sure that anything we did do, we put everything we had into it. And I think his attitude was, if you're going to half-ass it, you might as well not do it. So that was kind of what he instilled in me was, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right.
And that's a great attitude to have no matter where you are, on the court, off the court. Do it, go all in, or decide maybe that's not for you.
Yeah, for sure.
You ended up being a 2-time national qualifier in speech and debate. What was that like as an accomplishment?
It was cool. It was definitely a surprise. I thought I was decent at it, but then you start going to tournaments with other students from around, not just North Carolina, but really like the whole Southeast, and you start winning stuff. I think I'm pretty good at this stuff. So qualifying for nationals was cool. We only went one year because it would usually get in the way of state tournament basketball stuff. It was always around that time of year. But we went one year, did okay, but it's fun being good at stuff. And it was always kind of a little like extra thing on the resume that I had that some other basketball players didn't have. So I always took some pride in it.
Was there any thought of once you made the decision to go to Wake Forest to continue to do that?
No, not really. I mean, Wake has a pretty intense debate team, but they do kind of events that I was not very well versed in. They did like congressional debate, Lincoln Douglas. That was not stuff that I did in high school. So I probably wasn't qualified to do it. But the other thing is like, it's very intense. It's a full-time team. And I think that that would have gotten in the way of basketball. Like I wanted to put my whole heart into being a basketball player and just kind of thought that debate would get in the way of that.
As you're now approaching 30 and looking ahead a little bit, where do you see yourself, let's say, in 10, 15 years?
Ooh, what a question. I don't know if I like to think that far ahead professionally because things can change so much so fast. If you would ask me 10 years ago when I was 19, what do you want to do? I would never say, oh, I want to do production for WWE. If you would have told 19-year-old me that's what you're going to be doing, I wouldn't like that. But 10 years later, I'm here and I'm very happy with it. And I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. I want to continue to do it further. So the truth is, I don't know. I hope I'm doing something somewhat similar, but I hope I don't do a complete 180 and change my job completely, but I don't know.
And lastly, when you look back at your time on the hardwood, what would you say basketball has given you?
God, everything. Even going back to my dad, basketball put food on the table. Basketball has given me every vacation I've been on, every pair of shoes that I've bought or been given, every Christmas gift I got. Not even to mention the personal relationships it's gotten me, the life lessons it's taught me, the education it got me. Everything that makes my life amazing, you can zero in back to basketball. So when people say it's just a game, it is a little bit, but basketball changes people's lives and creates relationships all over the world. And I'm no different than that. And my parents met because of basketball. If basketball didn't exist, my dad's not going to Duke. He's from Southern California. He didn't know where Duke was when they first called him. But Coach K and the program that he was building enticed him to take a chance and go to Duke, where he met my mom and started our family. So basketball has been everything in my life, and I hope it's a huge part going forward. For me to have my dad work in such an incredible industry, I think shaped me as a person and only for the better. Like I can't think of a way basketball has made my life worse, and I owe the game a lot.
Anthony, I want to thank you so much for joining the I Play 2 podcast today, talking about your time at Wake Forest, hearing about you starting on senior day, the great stories about your mom and your dad. Continued success at WWE, and thank you again, man. Take care.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.